My son handed me an eviction notice at my own front door and smiled. That line still echoes in my head like a cruel joke no one laughed at. My name is Evelyn Parker, 63 years old, retired teacher, mother of one. For most of my life, I believed the worst pain a mother could ever face was losing her child. I was wrong. The real nightmare is standing on your own porch looking into the eyes of the boy you once saved and realizing he's the one throwing you out of the home you built with your bare hands. It was a gray Tuesday morning, the kind where the air feels heavy and even the wind seems hesitant. Ryan stood under the porch light dressed too sharply for a visit to his mother. He held a crisp white envelope between two fingers like it might stain him if he held it too long. "Mom," he said, voice flat as the sky above us, "it's time you find a nursing home." I laughed, not because it was funny, but because I couldn't believe he meant it. But when I saw the official seal, the signatures, the words "eviction notice" in bold type, my laugh died halfway up my throat. I looked at him, at the face I used to kiss goodnight the man I'd nearly bankrupted myself to save. "Ryan, this is my house," I whispered. He shrugged. "Not anymore." Something cracked inside me, not my heart that had been breaking slowly for months, but something deeper, something that felt like the last thread of motherhood snapping. When I tore the paper in half and threw it at him, he pulled out his phone and dialed 911, told them his unstable elderly mother was having an episode. And just like that, blue and red lights flooded the street. I remember the neighbors staring, whispering. I remember the cuffs on my wrists, the cold metal biting my skin. And I remember thinking this is what betrayal looks like when it comes dressed as family. I tell my listeners now in the calmest voice I can manage, that was the moment motherhood ended for me and survival began. Then as the sirens fade in my memory, I take a deep breath and say, "You want to know how I got there? Let's rewind." 2 years before that eviction notice, I was sitting in a cold doctor's office clutching my son's hand while the world fell apart around me. "Stage 3 lymphoma," the doctor said gently, and I swear the air left the room. Ryan's face went pale, and all I could think was, not my boy, not after everything we've already lost. I remember standing up, looking that doctor dead in the eye and saying, "I don't care what it costs, just save my boy." And I meant it. I sold the small house I'd spent 30 years paying off. I drained my retirement account, cashed out my life insurance, and quit teaching because he needed me more than my students did. For the first time in decades, my purpose wasn't lesson plans or grading papers, it was survival, his. When Ryan's treatments began, I moved into his house to take care of him. I cooked soups that went untouched, cleaned up after his chemo sickness, and held his hand while he groaned in pain. He told me he didn't want me at the clinic, said the sight of me there would make him too emotional. I respected that. That's what mothers do. We respect our children's wishes, even when they hurt. I used to joke that I could recognize the smell of hospital antiseptic better than my own perfume. It was my new, normal, long nights, whispered prayers and bills that piled up like mountains. When you're a mother, I tell people now, you never think to ask for receipts. You just pay the bills and pray. Some days, a woman named Sarah, a kind-voiced nurse, would call to give updates on Ryan's progress. She thanked me for being such a devoted mother. I didn't know then that Sarah wasn't a nurse at all, just his girlfriend playing a role. I believed every word because love can make you blind in ways logic never could. For months, Ryan's condition worsened. His hair thinned, his cheeks hollowed, his voice weakened. I would sit outside his door at night listening to his breathing, terrified of silence. When the doctor finally said the cancer was in remission, I cried harder than I did the day he was born. But then, something shifted. Ryan grew distant. He avoided eye contact, took long phone calls in the other room, and spoke to me like I was some unwanted guest. One afternoon over coffee gone cold, he said, "Mom, we should transfer the house deed to my name. It'll make medical financing easier." I hesitated just for a moment, but then I thought, he's been through enough. I should trust him. So I signed the papers. Looking back now, I realize that was the moment the trap snapped shut the day love turned from a lifeline into a leash. A week after Ryan kicked me out of my own home, I found myself sitting on the edge of a sagging motel bed, staring at the water stains on the ceiling, and wondering how 63 years of life could shrink down to one suitcase and $212 in my checking account. The room smelled like cigarette smoke and regret. I remember thinking this must be what rock bottom feels like. Then at 9:47 p.m., there was a knock on the door. When I looked through the peephole, I saw a man in a gray suit holding a leather briefcase. He looked like bad news with good posture. "Mrs. Parker?" he asked when I cracked the door open, keeping the chain latched. "My name is Jonathan Reeves. I'm an investigator with the State Insurance Fraud Division. I need to talk to you about your son." Those words made my stomach twist. If this is about medical bills... He shook his head. "Ma'am, I'm afraid it's not about medical bills. It's about fraud. Your son never had cancer." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. "I'm sorry." Jonathan opened his briefcase and laid out a stack of documents on the motel's chipped desk. "These are your son's medical records, financial statements, and insurance claims. The treatments he told you about. They never happened. The hospital invoices were created on his computer. He's transferred nearly $900,000 from your accounts into his over the last 18 months. I sat down hard on the edge of the bed. It felt like being hit by lightning and drowning at the same time. He went on. "We believe your son has been running a larger scheme. Several other elderly individuals have come forward with similar stories, people he met through community events, online forums, even church groups. He claimed he was battling cancer and needed help with medical expenses." I stared at the paperwork, at the fake doctor signatures, the fake billing addresses. Every memory of those hospital updates, the nurse's phone calls, his trembling hands, all of it rewrote itself in my mind as lies. Jonathan looked at me carefully. "We need your help to build the case, Mrs. Parker, but it won't be easy. Are you willing to cooperate?" There wasn't much left of me that could still break. I nodded. If my son wants to play games with people's lives, then he's about to meet the woman who taught him strategy. Over the next few weeks, we worked together. I called Ryan, pretending to be weak and confused. "Sweetheart," I said on the phone one afternoon, voice trembling, "I just wanted to hear your voice. I've been feeling so lost lately." He slipped right back into the role, comforting, charming, dripping with fake concern. "Don't worry, Mom. I'll take care of you once everything settles. You just have to trust me." Jonathan was listening on the other end, recording everything. Finally, after gathering enough evidence, I agreed to meet Ryan in person. I wore a wire beneath my cardigan, heart hammering in my chest. When I arrived at his new apartment, a penthouse overlooking the city skyline, I nearly laughed at the cruelty of it. Marble countertops, designer furniture art that probably cost more than my old house. Ryan opened the door, all smiles and silk pajamas. "Mom, what a surprise." I stepped inside and looked around. "You look healthy, Ryan," I said, my voice calm but cold. Funny for a man who's supposed to be dying. The words hit him like a slap. His face flickered, confusion, denial, fear. "Mom, I can explain. Don't bother." I pulled out a photo Jonathan had given me. Ryan dining at an expensive restaurant the week he'd claimed to be too weak from chemotherapy to stand. "You've been lying for 2 years. You stole my savings, my house, my peace of mind." He dropped the act, then fell to his knees, begging, tears forming, but no shame behind them. I looked down at him, the man who had once been my world, and said quietly, "The woman who would have died for you. Died the day you lied to her face." The investigation spread faster than gossip in a small town. Within weeks, the FBI joined the case, uncovering a web of deceit that reached far beyond me. 14 other victims, all seniors, all good-hearted people who believed they were helping a young man fight for his life. Their stories were heartbreakingly familiar. Ryan had perfected his performance, tailoring his lies to match each person's soft spot. For me, it was motherhood. For them, it was compassion. When the agents told me how wide his scheme had grown, I didn't know whether to cry or throw up. My son hadn't just stolen from me, he'd built a career on betrayal. Then came the second punch. Mrs. Parker, my attorney, said, sliding a document across the table, "Your son's defense team is claiming you were involved, that you helped him create the fraud." I stared at him, thinking I'd misheard. Involved, I was the victim. They're arguing that no reasonable person would keep paying for treatments without ever seeing proof. They're trying to paint you as an accomplice who turned on him when things went south. I laughed not because it was funny, but because disbelief was easier than despair. So now, love is a crime. A week later, I was sitting in an interrogation room, hands trembling, a camera recording every breath I took. The agent across from me leaned forward, voice low but firm. "Mrs. Parker, we just need you to clarify your role in these transactions." My throat tightened. I looked straight into that camera and said I wasn't his partner. I was his prey. Silence filled the room. When the truth finally broke through the forged documents, the fake hospitals, the recordings I'd helped gather, the case turned on its head. The prosecutors built it piece by piece, and by the time it went to trial, there wasn't a shred of doubt left. Ryan Parker, my only child, was convicted on 17 counts: wire fraud, elder abuse, money laundering, and identity theft. The sentence, 27 years in federal prison. The day of sentencing, I sat in the courtroom surrounded by other victims. The air was thick with something unnameable, grief, relief, justice, all tangled together. When the judge asked if I wanted to speak, I rose to my feet. My knees shook, but my voice didn't. "Your Honor, my son stole our money, but he couldn't steal our dignity. He tried to make us ashamed for trusting him, but compassion isn't weakness. It's what makes us human. We may have lost our savings, our homes, our peace, but we didn't lose ourselves." I turned toward Ryan. He looked smaller than I remembered, his suit hanging loose on his shoulders, his eyes darting anywhere but mine. For a moment, I saw the little boy who used to run through our yard with scraped knees, and then I saw the man who'd turned kindness into currency. When the judge's gavel came down, the room exhaled as one. The bailiff stepped forward. The cuffs clicked shut around Ryan's wrists. The metal glinted under the fluorescent lights. As they led him away, I whispered to myself, for the first time in 2 years, I could breathe. 6 months later, peace finally found its way back to me quietly, like morning light slipping through the curtains. I now live in a small house on the outskirts of Nashville. It's nothing like the home I lost, but it's mine. The floors creak, the paint peels in places, and there's a stubborn little garden behind the porch where I've started planting roses again, the same kind my mother once loved. Every time I press my hands into the dirt, I think about how strange it is that something so fragile can grow out of broken ground. One Thursday afternoon, I found an envelope in the mailbox with a prison return address. My breath caught before I even touched it. I didn't have to read the name to know who it was from. Ryan's handwriting, precise and oddly polite, looked like it belonged to someone else entirely. The letter started with apologies. He said prison had given him time to think. He admitted to being diagnosed with narcissistic and antisocial tendencies. He wrote that he finally understood how deeply he had hurt me, that stealing my money had been terrible, but stealing my trust was worse. He said he wished he could take it all back. I read it once, then again, and then I folded it neatly and placed it in the drawer with my old photographs, the ones I can't quite throw away but can't bear to look at either. He wanted forgiveness. I wanted peace. Only one of us got what we wanted. Peace, I've learned, doesn't arrive with an apology. It grows quietly, like roots beneath the soil. That's what my days are now, quiet growth. I started the Parker Foundation for Financial Safety, a small organization helping older women who've been financially abused by their own families. We help them recover what was stolen, their savings, their voices, their confidence. Sometimes we just listen because sometimes that's all anyone ever needed. At first, I thought losing my son would destroy me, but it didn't. It rebuilt me into a woman he could never deceive again. The grief never fully leaves, but it no longer defines me. Last week, I hung a small wooden sign at the edge of my garden. It reads, "Home Sweet Home." For the first time in years, the words felt true. I stood there, sunlight warming my face, and looked straight into the camera for our Real Her Stories interview. If my story reached you, I said softly, like, share and tell your own, because silence protects no one. This is Real Her Stories.